Hey guys, welcome back to User Experience Points. This week we're going to talk about Shadow Warrior because, well, this game is freaking awesome. But it also has a really great range of UX design examples to talk about. There's a few confusing ones and a few that are utterly brilliant. So let's start with the options menu because it's got both. I've said before how important it is to include descriptions of certain items in options menus when games use more esoteric terminology. And that's executed pretty well here, but the descriptions are only used on items that the designers decided needed a little bit more explanation, like what it means to enable blinking and auto change. One could argue that certain items in this menu that got a description didn't necessarily need it, but even common video game terms like checkpoints are handled differently depending on the game you're playing. So it's better to fully explain yourself than leave your user possibly confused. This menu also contains two really cool features I wish I had known about before I went to this menu so I could record this footage. Not only can you change the in-game appearance of your sword, but there's also an insane amount of customization for your crosshair. I feel like these are in the right place, especially since you can access this menu during regular gameplay or from the title screen, but the game gives no real indication that these features exist. I get that it's an expectation the user would go to the options menu at some point to adjust their controls or something, but it seems odd that none of the loading screen hints are, hey, you can customize your crosshair in the options menu. This is not a huge deal, but it was kind of a personal bummer for me because I didn't discover these cool features until I was like halfway through the game and making an episode about it. Next, let's talk about this game's cutscenes really quick. It's great that the user is fully in control here. They can pause and skip these cutscenes whenever they want. The fact that you have to hold a button to skip a cutscene is also a nice touch because it prevents accidentally skipping something that you're enjoying watching. But the indicator that you can do this comes up way too often. It just gives off a weird vibe when you're watching a video game cutscene and it keeps telling you, hey, look, if you're bored, it's okay, you can skip this. Users only need to hear that once, especially if they just happen to forget how to skip a cutscene and start pressing buttons. They'll immediately see that no matter what button they press, all they have to do is hold it. It's okay, Shadow Warrior. Your cutscenes are a lot of fun. You don't need to keep reminding us that we can skip them. Next, let's talk about loading your game. This screen is a little confusing. See, instead of separate campaign files, it just keeps track of your checkpoint and manual saves for each chapter. This led to some serious confusion on my part. See, I actually started a new game so I could record the intro cutscene for this episode, and then when I went to load my game, I was terrified to see that my only option was selecting the prologue. I thought I had lost all my progress in the game until I saw that I could select the chapter I was currently on and found my most recent save for that chapter. Now, this is a good system, but because it didn't fit my usual expectations, it led to a very frustrating and confusing moment for me. And that's just one of the pitfalls of being a designer. Sometimes you want to innovate and find a more efficient way to do a certain menu pattern, but sometimes it's best to stick with things that users are going to expect. Decisions like that come down to knowing your users very well. I would be curious to see if this was user tested because for all I know, my confusion could be unique to my experience. That's debatable, but the controls for this menu definitely are not. The drop-down pattern from the options menu is used to select your difficulty and chapter to sort your save files. But instead of somehow being able to move over to these options and select them, they're assigned to the shoulder and trigger buttons on the controller. This means each of these two menus are triggered by two different buttons. It would make sense if pressing, say, L1 and R1 toggled between difficulties and pressing L2 and R2 toggled between chapters, but it doesn't. They both just open the menu. I'm not sure why this was done, but it would have made a lot more sense to assign these menus to the corresponding shoulder buttons on the controller. Difficulty is on the left, so it could have been mapped to L1, and chapters are on the right, so it could have been mapped to R1. Alright, it's been a bit of a bumpy road, but I saved the best for last. The main menu for Shadow Warrior, which you use to upgrade Lo Wang's skills and his weapons, is perfect. Not only does it have some really smart, consistent design patterns, it's also really cool to look at. More often than not, UX designers have to compromise visual fidelity in order to make something more usable, but that isn't the case here. This menu has 3 distinct and very cool looking sections, but you interact with each of them the exact same way. Whether you're upgrading Lo Wang's weapons or giving him a new power, you spend the currency at the top of the screen, press the shoulder buttons to navigate between each section's subsections, and then figure out which upgrade you want to purchase. And even though each section has a different visual style, it's extremely easy to tell which upgrades you've purchased and which ones you haven't. Out of every section of the entire user experience for Shadow Warrior, this is definitely the one that has the touch.
You got the touch. Goddamn right. You got the power. When all hell's breaking loose, you'll be right in the eye of the storm.
And that covers it for this week. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've been enjoying them, definitely subscribe because I upload a new one of these every Friday. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to the publishers of Shadow Warrior, Devolver Digital, because of their policy when it comes to YouTube content. It's a simple one. Yes, you can post and monetize any footage of their games on YouTube. They're one of the good ones. In fact, they have this awesome website called Can I Post and Monetize Videos of DevolverGames.com. And, well, just go there and see it for yourself. It's a lot of fun. Definitely refresh the page a few times. I'll put a link in the description. That way you've got something to do until next Friday. I'll see you then.